Hey everybody, welcome to Meddkit's Provider Spotlight, where every week we are interviewing the most amazing private practices from all over the United States. We are so lucky that we get to come here every week and learn from someone new. We get new perspectives, new information, and we're talking about with folks in all different specialties. So every week we have something new. And so this week I'm really excited to introduce you to someone that we just had great conversation and I love everything that she's doing. So, introducing you to Christina DiBernardo, owner and executive director of Expressive Connections Mental Health Counseling. Christina, welcome to Provider Spotlight.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Same here. I'm very excited to dive in with you today. I know we'll have a lot to cover. But something that I love to do here in the beginning and just so everyone can kind of get to know you, know your background. You've had so much experience in the mental health field. I always like to know for folks like what inspired you to be here, to open up your own practice, to do what you're doing.
So that is such an interesting story. So I will take it back to my undergraduate degree program. I was studying criminal justice actually, and with a minor in psychology because I always had a love for psychology and an interest in the subject as a whole. And I actually failed a class in criminal justice. And as silly as that may sound, but I failed a class. And I had to look at it and say, okay, I either have to retake this class in order to continue with this major, or I can switch my major and then maybe I prioritize psychology and just get a minor in criminology or something like that. And so that was kind of the first, yep, I'm going to switch my track. And the reason that I share even that is because I know so many people who are so afraid of failure and who think, if they fail at something that they set their minds out to do, that it's kind of an end all. And for me, it led me in the right direction. And so I always share that with people because you don't have to be afraid of your failures. In fact, you should not strive for failure, but you should always strive to learn from all of your experiences. So I love sharing that. Just because I feel like it's important. But from there, I connected with some professors in the department. I went to Rutgers University for my undergraduate degree, and there was this one professor who spent, I want to say, about 3 hours with me after I sent out a mass email to a bunch of professors in the department saying, I need research experience if I'm going to go to grad school and get my, degree in this or that. And he sat with me for 3 hours and was just like, Christina, what do you want to do with psychology? Where do you see yourself, in this field? And we got to talking, and I talked to him about how I really want to be there for people, that I want to help them on their journey toward health and wellness in mental health. And so he went through different degree track programs with me and, where can you go with this? And, that's what led me to pursue mental health counseling.
Mm.
And I've done a lot of networking over the years since then, made really great connections with some wonderful people. And I can really attribute my ending up in private practice to just having really good mentors and a really good support system, whether that was people in my personal life who believed that I could open up a business. They don't teach you how to run a business in mental health school, but I had, my husband and other people and friends and family who said, Christina, you can do this. You're a very, you're a hardworking person. You're determined, you've absolutely got this. And then mentors from that one professor at Rutgers University all the way up to the person whose private practice I worked at through my internship and limited permitteeship and eventually worked as basically a clinical director for her, all encouraging me and guiding me in the best ways possible that led to me being able to have my own practice and then expand that into a group practice. It's been a really wonderful journey.
That's so exciting. I always love hearing about people's stories, and it's so nice to hear that you had such great resource, especially, being in school and having great mentors and talking with professors. And it's It's so nice to have people like that in your life that can open up your eyes to opportunities and pathways that you never thought were possible. So that is an incredible story. I love it. I would love to hear, what you're doing today in Expressive Connections. What are some of the most common areas that you treat or find that people are typically struggling with? And if there's, other modalities in the office that you provide as well.
Yeah, so one of the things that I love about having a group practice, so specifically, when you're a solo practitioner, I mean, it's so wonderful because you get to work with the people that you know that you can help, that your
Yeah.
skill set allows you to show up for, because we
Yeah.
all have unique skill sets. We all have different ways that we can connect with different people to get the most out of them. And one of the most amazing things about a group practice is that it's not just me, that it's other clinicians with other interests and other passions and other ways of connecting with people. So if the way that I work doesn't isn't the most effective way to work with somebody, I've
Mhm.
got somebody on my team who can fill in that gap. And we all do that for each other. And so we're pretty eclectic as a group. We work with kids from as young as 6 years old right now, all the way up to people well into adulthood, older adults as well. And we use a variety of different modalities. We have clinicians who focus specifically on trauma. Whether you are a child, teen, or adult, we focus
Mhm.
on trauma. We use creative expressive arts therapies, from using movement to music to visual arts to yoga, even. I have a couple of clinicians who are also certified either in yoga or Pilates. I have one clinician who's actually pursuing trauma-informed yoga, which is so cool. And so we're able to just, meet a variety of needs in that way. I've got another clinician who provides EMDR. I have other clinicians who focus on behavior modification with children who have ADHD or ODD or even OCD.
Mhm.
We have clinicians who have a lot of experience working with adults on the autism spectrum. So we've been able to really grow into a practice that I don't want to say can meet all needs, but can meet a variety of needs in a lot of really wonderful ways. Cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. I mentioned EMDR and play therapy and art therapy modalities. We've really we run the gamut on a whole different or a lot of different specialties.
I love it. It's such a great way to approach people. It's never a one size fits all, right?
It
And
really isn't.
not everything is the same. And people, I love that you can take a look at the individual and say, this is, I think, what would help you. And there's so many different things that we can try. And so I think that's a wonderful resource to give to people, especially when, it's so hard. A lot of people, they don't know where to turn, and they finally get the confidence to reach out to someone and to have so many different pathways, that you can give someone to healing is a wonderful thing. So I loved hearing all about the different ways that you've helped people, but in your, work with individuals, I know that you also offer corporate wellness, which is very different. And I know a lot of people could really use it. So can you tell me a little bit about how that works, what makes it effective, and why it's important for people in the workplace today, and maybe why companies should be thinking about this and doing this more?
I love this question. I'm really passionate about this as a whole. So I saw a really significant need for programs like this,
Hmm.
COVID, right?
Yeah.
Where, the individual, and it started even quite simply just in networking with other professionals in different fields and in different capacities, and then the work with my own clients who were coming into either sessions or these networking meetings incredibly drained and incredibly burnt out. I mean, and this was true for everybody. This isn't just true for people who are on the front lines or in
Right.
entry level employment. This is true for leadership and decision makers as well. COVID changed everything about workplace culture. I mean, here you and I are sitting on this Zoom call when pre-COVID, we might be finding a way to meet in person because
Yep.
we didn't think, hey, let's I mean, maybe we did think to utilize Zoom, but not as often as we
No.
do now. And it's drastically changed so much about workplace culture. And not that there wasn't a need for this beforehand, but I personally noticed a significant need as we were coming out of the thralls of everything with COVID. And
Yeah.
so we provide a multitude of different kinds of workshops and experiences. And what I've found to be most effective with corporate wellness are companies who are willing to provide programming, not necessarily just the one lunch and learn to, educate their staff on one particular topic, but to make this something that they are consistently engaged with, whether it's workshops around meditation, workshops around understanding how the body responds to stress, workshops around, you know, setting boundaries in the workplace and effective communication strategies. It's not just what we need as a whole in wellness, but what does the company need? What are they noticing in terms of what their employees, mid-level management, upper level management, and they themselves as leaders, what are they noticing the pain points are or the struggles are within their workplace? Does communication need to be improved upon? Do people need to actually take their lunch breaks? I had a CEO ask me one day, how do I get my staff to take their lunch break? Because so many of them just want to, power through and work through to meet that bottom line. And the bottom line is being met, but I still need them to take a lunch break for their own self-care. And I thought it was so wonderful that he asked me that. And I was so thrilled. And we had a whole conversation. It was wonderful. And so we provide programming around improving workplace communication. We have an entire program around preventing and reducing the effects of burnout, specifically when it comes to what employees and leadership might experience, both at work, but also at home, because burnout's not just attributed to what goes on at work. It can be attributed to, well, I'm a new mom and I am trying to meet my bottom line at work, but then I'm also dealing with a sick parent, or, I'm dealing with my husband, taking, a new job. Who knows
Yeah.
what it could be. There's so many overlaying factors that are attributed to this. And mental health and mental wellness, I'm obviously passionate about, but it's such an important component to look at when you want to have a healthy workplace culture as well.
100%. I think, the culture and the US workforce is very different. You hear about how other countries, deal with work and the lifestyle and the work-life
Hmm.
balance. And I think definitely here in the United States, there is definitely a lack thereof. And we often very much get caught up in it. And, we don't take the breaks that we know we need. We want to power through, like you said, not take our lunch. We have a deadline, or you're in sales and you need good numbers for the month, whatever that might be. I feel like we're all kind of pedal to the metal and we're often brushing things underneath the carpet. And so it's so wonderful that you're providing this to organizations, so that people maybe can have maybe a little bit of an aha moment and say, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's me. I need to work on this a little bit more." Or, "Hey, I can see I really truly care about my employees, and things hasn't been trending in a great direction for a while. What can we do to move this around?" And so I love
Yeah.
that this is something that you offer. Very.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's a passion project that's very close to my heart. I love doing it. I love being able to, connect with, again, being in a group practice allows us, and having such an collective staff really allows us to connect with so many people.
Yeah.
This allows us to do it on an even larger scale and getting people access to just different resources and educating them on how they can just manage stress a little bit better, even if that's, the main goal is really wonderful. And you're right, it is very different in other countries as comparison to here. A family member of mine, they're in Italy and they have a wonderful and very large business centered around providing lunches to schools as well as bread products and other things into local grocery stores. And it's really interesting. And when I went and visited that family, oh my gosh, 10 years ago, actually, they
Wow.
gave us a tour of the factories and everything and talked to us through what a day at this factory, and this is just one of their factories, right? But what a day looked like and
Right.
how all of the employees got there at the same time. He showed us this room that looked just like this really cozy, comfortable, just like homey space where everyone could put their things. Everybody took a shower before they got to work, so really, really clean. Everybody had lunch together that was provided by the company, but everybody had this lunch together. It wasn't okay, lunch is at noon
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
see you when you get back. It was very much, a culture of we're
Oh,
all in
yeah.
this together and we're going to do this, and we're going to take our break because and we do this and we work together, we eat together, we play together, we make sure that, everything is functioning together. It was very cohesive and it was amazing. And their bottom line, their output is amazing. The output of, product and sales doesn't change because they all do that,
Yeah.
is I think where I'm even getting at with this story. Whereas, especially in places like Manhattan, where the culture is so fast paced and you got to hustle and got to make that bottom line, you got to make those sales, whatever, you know, industry specific terms, but whatever it is, it can the ideas of we're functioning together as a team or your well-being matters because if you're not well, you can't perform.
Mm-mm.
Things like that, those kinds of messages get lost.
100%. I so agree with you. And kind of on the topic of lost messages, I kind of love talking about this. I almost ask it every time because everyone has such an interesting perspective, is what it is for them. But I love talking about misconceptions. With Google, ChatGPT, lots of resources for people to look up everything. Which is in a sense great. There's a lot of information that we can seek out if people are interested, and it's great that they're, concerned about their health, they're invested in their health, and they want to learn more. So like A plus there, right? But not everything is great information on what you find online. There are a lot of misconceptions in healthcare. Every specialty has one, and so I'd love to hear from you. What are some misconceptions that you feel like you're constantly debunking, or you're like, oh yeah, people are saying, oh, I heard of this, and you're like, well, that's like half true, not all the way true. This is what it actually is. So what are some of those things for you that are kind of frequent contenders in this area?
I have so many. I'm gonna start with a gentle one. The gentle one being that you don't have to attend therapy only when something is wrong.
Mm,
You Therapy can benefit you at any point in your life and in your journey. I mean, if you think about who a therapist can be for you, it's somebody who listens with a non-judgmental ear, who doesn't know the key players in your life and can come in with fresh perspective, can come in completely unbiased, and who is on your team always,
Yeah.
even if they're telling you, hey, Rachel, I think that decision that you made, I think that we could have, gone about that differently. Let's explore that a little bit more. Even if they're telling you something like that, they're
Yeah.
still on your team and they want what's best for you always. And so you don't have to be in crisis in order to seek therapy. Your child doesn't have to be in crisis in order to benefit
Yeah.
from just having somebody on their support team. So that's my gentle one. The other ones, I'm kind of going to lump this together in one category. I appreciate social media for what it is, very much so. I think that it is a really wonderful way for people to make connections so long as they're using it appropriately. And it's even a really great way to get snippets of information.
Yeah.
However, where are you getting those snippets of information from? Who are you getting those snippets of information from?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people go on social media who discuss their own struggles with mental health. And I think that that is wonderful because one, they are really exercising their autonomy to discuss their experience and they're letting other people know, hey, you're not alone.
Yeah.
I'm right here with you, and this is my experience. And I hope that my experience helps you to at least explore a little bit for yourself. And what I have seen is a lot of people coming in saying, well, I watched this in this video or saw this on, some social media platform
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I have a diagnosis of based on what I watched. So
Mhm.
they're either coming in diagnosing themselves or they're diagnosing the people in their life.
Yeah.
And the most common diagnosis that I hear someone saying about something and somebody else in their life, oh, my so and so is a narcissist.
Yeah.
My
I was just gonna say she's gonna say
That's the big
this. I
one.
know it.
That is the big one that I hear of other people diagnosing other people in their lives. But what I hear people diagnosing themselves with are things like autism, ADHD, even borderline personality disorder. I've had people self diagnose themselves with, and none of those things can one self diagnose. Even if you are a professional in this field, can you know what autism looks like? Absolutely. Can you go in your DSM and say, here's the criteria. I'm pretty sure I meet these. Absolutely. And should you still go to a professional who is qualified to make that diagnosis and can do all of the appropriate psychological testing with you? The answer is yes. So the biggest thing that I'm seeing now, especially in the younger population, younger adults and even teens, are people coming in saying, I am self-diagnosed this. And one of the other messages that I want to debunk is that word am. I am ADHD because we don't go around saying, hi, I am anxiety. Hi, I am depression. Or maybe people say I am depressed or I am anxious, but we don't go around saying I am cancer for somebody who has cancer or I am Tourette's syndrome. We say
Yep.
I have. But in the mental health world, we are always looking for, I find too many people saying I am this as opposed to I
Mhm.
have this. And they're really personalizing it and they don't have to. Even if you have a diagnosis like autism or ADHD, which don't have cures, it doesn't mean that it has to impact every single aspect of it doesn't make you who you are. It's
Yeah.
something that you have and something that you deal with. And there are ways to overcome certain kinds of challenges. There are ways to still absorb information in a way that works for you. There are ways for you to maintain relationships and maintain jobs and depending on where a person is at, but it's not a personality trait and it's not who you are. So my biggest messages to people are therapy doesn't have to be for when you're in crisis. Don't diagnose yourself. Work with somebody that's a professional. Don't diagnose other people, especially as narcissists. That is very specific. Someone can be very selfish. Someone can be mean. Someone can even really just take a lot of energy from you. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have narcissistic personality disorder. That is a big one. And if you do have a mental health diagnosis, it's something that you have. It's not a part of who you are.
I love all of this. I mean, it is very difficult. I think a lot of us can be misguided in what we find and jump to conclusions really quick because, our lifestyle is such instant gratification, right? We can look
Sure.
anything up very quickly. We have things at our fingertips all the time. And so I think we're just so used to doing things very quickly, assuming and then jumping in full force, and that is what it is, right? And
Yeah.
so I love that you have presented this idea of, also especially for other counselors as well. This is exactly why we have these conversations is because everyone has a different perspective on this. And you're the first person that has, talked about, yeah, counselors need counselors too. You know, it's it's really important. It's very hard to, look in the mirror, right? And be able to look at that objectively and see what's actually going on. I think for anyone, whether you're a professional in this field or not, it's very hard to be objective with yourself. So I love everything that you've brought here to the table in terms of misconceptions and debunking them for us today. I think everyone across the board finds that valuable. So really love what you have here. And kind of to round off today, there's a little bit of a two-prong question that I love to ask folks. Something that, you can leave with people today that are just watching and how to put their mental health on a great trajectory. Maybe something small that we can do daily. So I'll let you answer that first, and then I'll kind of ask my other question second.
So it's interesting that you said, looking in the mirror. That's actually an exercise that I do have people do. Just look at themselves in the mirror. It sounds really simple, and it's something that maybe people do every day when they're doing their hair, brushing their teeth, or whatever it is. But how often do we just sit in front of a mirror and make eye contact with ourselves very intentionally? And so I encourage people to, this isn't necessarily something that you have to do every day. It's not really an exercise that I recommend for daily practice.
Mhm.
But if you are just, if you're somebody who your mind is always going and you're really not necessarily taking the time to think about what are my needs, who am I as a person, and how do I want to show up for myself? How do I want to show up for the people in my life today? Take 2 minutes and just kind of sit in front of the mirror and don't break eye contact. That's kind of important. And people don't realize how scary that is. And then I always ask, well, why is it scary? It's just you,
Yeah.
right? And that's the deep question. That's the question that makes us think, well, why was that so hard? Why did I sit for 2 minutes and want to do nothing but break my own eye contact? Why am I sitting here laughing and giggling? And is this discomfort? Is this, I'm
Yeah.
happy to see me? Why am I crying? What I feel like that just those 2 minutes can unearth really important questions, not answers, questions. And then you can bring those into your therapy sessions. I don't recommend doing this unless you have a therapist already, or unless you are somebody who's an avid journaler or, really, you know, takes the time to
Yeah.
process things
Yeah.
emotionally. I recommend having a place to go after doing this exercise, whether
Yeah.
it's a friend, a therapist, a journal, something, because like I said, it can unearth some really important but deep and sometimes really painful questions.
Yep. And I love that. And you may have the same answer for this, but just because you touched on it, it would be great to know maybe one other small tip for maybe other counselors, clinicians, people that are in your field. Is there something that maybe you do or that they can do to help them? Obviously, you guys are sitting listening to people. You are hearing some of people's deepest and darkest thoughts. Maybe you can offer a piece of advice maybe for them that they
Yeah.
can take with them, whether it's, how to deal with, what it's like listening to people and some of really hard truths in life. But I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. So I want to comment too that, journaling is a wonderful exercise, that
Mhm.
diaphragmatic breathing, wonderful exercise, box breathing. People give different names, box
Mhm.
breathing or triangle breathing or, and all that is really valuable. The reason that I brought up the mirror exercise is because I am going to assume that it necessarily hasn't been discussed before, where
Yep.
journaling probably has. So I wanted to add something a little bit
Love
different and then journal afterwards. One of the things that and again, having a group practice allows me to do this, and I love this. I love working with young professionals in this field. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. Or licensed professional counselor is what it's known in other states. And so in order to acquire my license, you have to work with a limited permit under the supervision of a fully licensed clinician first. It's the same with social workers as well. Psychologists have that process. So we all go through the provisional license
Yeah.
of whatever our license is. So I love that in a group practice that I do get to work with younger professionals or professionals who are just newer in the career. And yesterday, actually, I was having a conversation with one of the clinicians that I supervise, and she asked a really important question, and it's to your point, and it's, Christina, how do you still show up for your clients in session when you've got your own stuff going on, when you're in your own yucky space, is the language that we wound up using. And, I think that sometimes clinicians are asked that question and expect here's the regimen on how to get through your day. And that's not how I answered the question. I said to her, I said, well, transparently, know thyself. If you are going through something that is going to take away how you show up for your clients that day, reschedule your day.
Yep.
They will understand, and you need it, because if you show up in a way that, people know people, right? If you show
Yep.
up and you're distracted or you're just not really there, the
They
person
know.
sitting across from you knows it. And it's really awful to be the client on the end of that side going, is it because of the stuff that I'm talking about? Is it because, am I putting too much on them? Like maybe I need to hold it back. And especially if you're someone like me who overthinks everything, that's exactly what's going on in your head. So, just being able to really be mindful of, well, what am I going, what is my yucky for the day? Am I fighting with my significant other? Am I just having trouble parenting? Am I studying for an exam and I'm just really distracted because, I'm studying for my licensing exam? What's going on for you? And of the stuff that you deal with outside of your work as a clinician, what can you compartmentalize? What's easy for you to compartmentalize and what isn't?
Yep.
For me personally, I can compartmentalize family turmoil.
Yep.
I just can. Not that it's not difficult, but I'm able to compartmentalize that and still show up for my clients.
Yep.
What is more difficult for me is if I'm having a disagreement or argument with my husband, with my significant
Yep.
other. That takes a lot more emotional energy for me. And if I'm unable to show up that day, then I'm unable to show up that day.
Yep.
Or, if I'm physically not feeling well, if I have a little bit of a headache, all
Yep.
right, maybe I can still show up. But if I'm a new mom and I had a very difficult pregnancy. And so it was really hard for me to show up to session while very nauseous or while very exhausted. And it would have been a disservice to my clients to just try to push myself through it.
Yep.
So I would urge clinicians to think about what's their stuff and
Yep.
what can you compartmentalize, what can't you, and you're not a bad clinician if you need to take the day off.
I so love all of this. This just needs to be said, and I think other people that are not clinicians often, if you're curious, I think it often crosses your mind, like, how do you handle this? Like, you're the professional, and, I'm curious to know what you think. And, we all think that. And then there's professionals that, in any industry that feel like, oh my gosh, like, how is this other person doing it? Like, what should I do? There, it's really hard. And I think, sometimes you're wandering in a desert somewhere trying to figure it out. And I think this is exactly what needs to be said. And it's so true. And I can't tell you probably how many people are going to be watching this and saying like, oh my gosh, it's me. That's so right. Like I should really think about this differently and not try to, trudge through. And, I really want to show up in the best way. And the way that I do that is serving me first so I can serve people better. And I love that wholeheartedly. I so appreciate, Christina, everything that you've shared with us today, your story, your insights, your vulnerability. It has been so amazing. I would love for you, before we lead off today, is just to tell people where they can find you guys, where to reach out, whether it's social, website. This is time for all the shout outs, all the shout outs.
Okay. Well, if anyone is looking to find us, they can find us at our website, which is expressiveconnectionsmhc.com. They can call us at 516-825-6567 if they are looking for services themselves within the New York area. So something unique about our license is that we are only licensed to provide services to clientele that live or work in New York State. So call us if that's where you are. You can also find me directly by emailing me at Christina at expressiveconnectionsmhc.com. If you're interested in corporate wellness, if you're a professional who's just looking for mentorship, I love doing all of that. So that's how you can reach me directly. And we do have a social media account. We have an Instagram, which is at Expressive Connections MHC.
Amazing. Christina, this has been so awesome. I'm so excited for everyone to watch, and we hope to have you on very soon again.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you.